This is going great. There, the floor is yours. You there, sir?
See in the chat, Noah has asked me to go ahead and speak. So we haven't been able to hear you guys until just now. So if I'm out of order, please let me know.
No, go ahead, sir.
First, I'd like to thank Chair Thomas and the rest of the committee for having me. My name is Brad Bergsma. I am a school board member from USD 352 in Goodland, Kansas. And appreciate you having me here. I didn't hear the opening question, so let me know where to jump in.
Thank you, Brad. The opening question was just tell us something unique or special about your district.
Unique and special about our district. Well, with state basketball going on right now, we're pretty proud of our defending state champion girls basketball team who survived last night. So we're all pretty excited about that. More specifically to the committee, I think one of the unique challenges to rural school districts in Western Kansas, or at least for our district, we're pretty pleased with the fact over the last 3 years, the number of work keys certificates that we've been able to have our student population achieve has grown quite significantly over the last 3 years, which is also impressive considering the growing number of at-risk students we've had over the last handful, 5 years. Our district now is in the neighborhood of 55% of our students are considered at risk. Our demographic, or the population we serve, is pretty high in poverty. We have a significant number of our students come from single family homes. We have a population of about 20% of English language learners. And actually, we have a growing number of students with severe disabilities. So this year, I believe we are crowding 15% of our students that would fit into that category. So for us to be able to serve those students with higher needs, it has been a challenge for us as a district, but something we feel like we've been tackling over the last several years and making improvement. And we've shifted to different testing metrics to help intervene and catch those students sooner. Another initiative that we began working on this year was we had a very significant problem with chronic absenteeism. I believe last year you'll find our numbers were around 30% of our students missed more than 10% of the school year. This is something, again, as a district, we've been really focused on correcting. To date, that number has dropped to about 12%. Still a work in progress, but something that our district has chosen to spend more time and effort on making sure our kids are in the classroom in front of our teachers so they can improve our outcomes.
Very good. Well, thank you for being here. We're going to move to Sandra Holling from Bucklands. Miss Sandra, are you on?
Yes, I am.
Go ahead.
Yes. Okay. So, well, first of all, thank you for inviting me to this meeting. And just talking a little bit about some of the things that have been going on in our district, some of the things that are good. We finally have been able to get to the point where we can have an instructional coach because of the increase in funding since 2016. We've been able to add an instructional coach, a title teacher, and We've also had people that shared our 5th grade teaching responsibilities, and now we are actually going to be able to hire a 5th grade teacher. So hopefully we'll have someone coming in for that soon. And then we are a district, we have 235 students. About 55 to 57% of them are qualify for free or reduced meals. So that would be kind of our poverty families there. We've had an increase in students in special ed. We've had an increase, and this fluctuates, but English language learners coming into our district. So some years that might be several, and some years that might be only a few. We're agricultural based community, so that brings in some of the transient people that are coming in to work for farmers. Some people that are coming up from Mexico come in and work for our farmers, and then they might move around to different communities. One of our good things that we've done, we were able to increase teacher salaries 16% with the increase of funding since 2016. And that's been, I think, a good thing for us. When you compared us with our league schools, we were at the very bottom 4 years ago, and now we're just slightly above the middle of our league and working towards moving even higher.
Well, congrats on that. Thank you for being here. Now I will turn to Kevin Cole from Labette. Kevin, are you on, sir?
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Oh, okay, thank you. Thank you, Senator Thomas and committee for having us on board. I had the luxury, we were up visiting some of our representatives yesterday, and I sat in on a couple of your committee meetings, and it was exciting to see the progress that was being made and the conversations that had, and I could tell that there's a lot of value in education in the state of Kansas. A little bit about Labette County. We're in the southeast corner of the state. We're our district office is approximately 20 miles away from the Oklahoma border. We have about 1,554 students in the district. We also have one high school and 5 K-8 buildings that are spread out throughout the community. So we have a lot of bus miles and a lot of travel in between. We're very fortunate. We do have a good support system, and our community values our schools. In rural America, some of our smaller communities, the buildings are basically the community. There's a partnership between the patrons and our constituents, and then our schools, and that's basically what built up some of those communities. Some of the highlights that we do, Brad spoke to. We use FastBridge. It's a testing mechanism that we basically monitor our kids. We apply it 4 times per year, and that allows us to see some of our students that may be lagging behind, whether it be math skills or science skills or other skills that they're needing. And we can identify those kids and then apply some intervention and some extra resources at those children to bring them back up. We find that works well for us because we are a meritocracy environment where we believe in holding our kids accountable for their efforts. And if they don't meet some of those requirements and they're not showing improvements, then basically they miss out on some activities and that's really a motivating factor for them to get improved. I also, particularly for myself, we belong to the SEK Interlocal, which is 13 school districts out of Southeast Kansas. And I'm proud to be the board president for the last 5 years. What I enjoy about the Interlocal is the fact that it really gives you the insight on what happens, and in a special education, the challenges, the needs, the impact that special needs kids have on a district, and the challenges that it brings. We're lucky in the fact that our superintendents, we have a superintendent council meeting every week, and those gentlemen in the 13, they collaborate together to find solutions, and it's an all-in approach to servicing some of our most vulnerable kids. But other than that, like I said, we're proud to be able to speak to the group, and would be more than happy to answer any questions that I can at this time.
Thank you, sir. And while I appreciate the title, I have not publicly disclosed my 2024 plans. Thank you.
Oh, sorry. Apologies.
Have we, Mr. Osmus, did we get him on the line? Yep. All right. I believe we have him.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, the floor is yours.
Get out. Can you hear me? Can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Oh, great. Hey, good afternoon. Couple of things. I want to start out by thanking you for inviting us and allowing us to share, but I also want to extend an apology because I'm actually calling from my office, and my office has set up a 2:00 appointment for me to meet with a client. So I'm going to have to disconnect shortly. But with that, a little bit about Dodge City, as Sandra was saying, it's from Buckland, right down the road. So if you're into big deer trophy hunting, we got some spots for you down here in this part of the state. But with that, as it relates to our school district, kind of what makes this unique, if you will, only a few other school districts in the state will have a similar makeup that we do. We've got around 7,200 kids. So for Kansas and Western Kansas in particular, we're a relatively large school district. Our students represent some 45 different countries, equaling to us over some 20 different languages, sitting somewhere around that 80. And just approximately about half of our kids, their first language or a language other than English is spoken at home. So say all that to say this, that Dodge City is extremely diverse. We are a growing community, got a lot of business and industry in this part of the state, meat packing, of course, farming, dairy. We're just opening up a new cheese plant here south of town, so we're projecting more growth within our community and our school district. A couple of things specific as it relates to our school district. One of the exciting things that we have going on at this time is we are doing a curriculum alignment. That is from grade school, middle school, all the way, of course, through the high school. So that's been really, really neat process, taking on that initiative, aligning our curriculum, of course, hoping that's going to lead to a better academic outcomes. At our most recent board, well, this may have been about 2 months ago, we just most recent adoption was for our science and our social studies curriculum. So moving forward on those things, we've already adopted math and English. So we've got some exciting things going on in our district as it relates to academics, and looking forward to the fruition of the changes that we're making as it relates to our curriculum and things of that nature. One of our we got a relatively large school district, lots of students, so we got various challenges, but probably the bigger challenges facing us, and this would not be unique to our district, but possibly more of a struggle in our part of the state than other parts of Kansas. It's recruiting teachers to this part of the state, and then once we recruit them, keeping them in this area. So we've got some grow your own initiatives going on, but that's definitely a struggle for us. Even a large school district that's relatively competitive with salary and things of that nature. Getting teachers in this part of the world can be a difficult challenge at times. So that's a little bit about Dodge City. I appreciate the time. Thank you very much.
No problem, Ryan. I know if you'll hang out with us for a minute, I think we got a question for you. I do just want to say at this time, we're going to kind of open it up. This is a conversation. This is a discussion between us and you guys. So there's going to be lots of questions. I do want to thank KASB, specifically Leah Flider, for helping organize this and getting you folks together, along with Representative Estes, who assisted as well. So just want to thank everybody for this. I think this is good conversation. With that, Representative Getz.
Hey, Ryan, this is for you. Good to see you. I just wanted to give you some space to maybe talk a little bit about what Dodge is doing on ESL and teacher recruitment. I know Dodge has got some leading programs in ESL just because of what we're working with, and just wanted to give you some space before you have to jump off to maybe talk about that a little bit, or anything else you want to before you get off.
Hey, how you doing? Good seeing you, Jason. I appreciate that. So I'll touch on teacher recruitment. So, of course, we use some of the more traditional means to recruit teachers. HR will do a variety of different visits to local universities. I know conferences probably isn't the right term to use for that, but definitely use whatever platforms are available to us as it relates to getting out to universities, recruiting in that manner. We have some of our grow your own, as I spoke about. We have a couple of initiatives here in Dodge City, and we may not be alone in this, but trying to find ways to create opportunities for paras in our classroom to become credentialed, to become, and then of course turn that into being a classroom teacher. So we've made some efforts there in trying to create opportunities for paras. They're already in the school district, already in the classroom, already working with our students. So we've made a push there. We have a couple of different initiatives that we actually have in the high school with our very own high school students, teachers academies, and things of that nature, trying to create opportunities through that avenue as well. Introduce them to the teacher experience, if you will. And trying to move, them from senior high, of course, through college, and then coming back to Dodge City or even the Southwest Kansas area, and putting those skills to use in the classroom. And then, of course, some of the more traditional means as it relates to, some of the PR and things of that nature. So our HR department, whether it be through travel, traditional means of trying to advertise, as well as some of our grow your own initiatives, we're trying to make a push there. So we do got some activity and some things moving forward, but it is it's Jason knows, being from the area, it's just not education. It's all sectors, whether it's healthcare, education, almost irregardless of what industry you're looking at. We have, some challenges getting people recruited to Southwest Kansas. As I said earlier, kind of trying to be funny, but not everybody loves to hunt and fish, and so we have a unique set of challenges.
Ryan,
I'm out here living in Western Kansas, highly agricultural, meat packing. But I love this part of the state. It does have a lot to offer. As far as ESL goes, Diana Mendoza, who works for our school district, oversees our migrant program. She actually serves on the Kansas Board of Regents. She does a excellent job. Our let's see, where are we sitting at? I would say we are at around 70% Hispanic or so. Now, as I said earlier, it's not just Spanish is going to be the predominant language spoken here in Dodge City and within our school district, but we represent about 45 different countries. So our ESL programs, it's rather diverse, but a lot of that is Spanish speaking. But we have a variety of different help, some things put into the school system to coming to us with English not being their first language, putting supports within the classroom, having supports outside of the classroom, having a couple of programs such as our migrant program geared towards trying to help those students close that achievement gap with a variety of different offerings within those departments. So yeah, we got heck, how do I even want to finish that comment off? So with our migrant program, with the in-classroom helps that we have as it relates to areas with newcomer programs that we have, and then of course Dodge City has been at this now for even my own wife is from Mexico. Spanish is spoken in my home. My children are bilingual. So Dodge City has been, meeting this challenge, if you will, for decades would not be an exaggeration at this point. So we definitely have our challenges with the number of backgrounds and languages that come to us, but the school district is making every effort that it can to reach those students, serve those students, and close those achievement gaps as it relates to our ESL speakers. I hope that helps, Jason.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just on the success, even just in my life, I also have the spicy wife syndrome with the Spanish at home, and so no comments from the chair on that one. But the school has both of your programs actually worked in my home with my daughter. She'll be finishing her teaching certificate next year, and she's been a para at Ross Elementary, and obviously went to Dodge City High School, graduated there, heard about the teaching opportunity, and has stuck it out and will finish next year. So those two programs actually paired together worked for her. So good job on that. And thank you for your testimony. And anything you have for us before you have to jump off, or questions to other board members, if you're willing, before you have to jump off.
I don't appreciate that testimony as it relates to your daughter. I appreciate that, but thank you for your time. Thank you so much. I look forward to seeing you back home.
Thank you for coming, sir, today. If any of the other members want to sort of touch on that as far as teacher recruitment or ESL programs, I would love to hear kind of what's going on in other districts. Anybody on WebEx wants to chime in, let me know, or the two in the room. I mean, you can hit the raise your hand button, but I'd like to hear if there's anybody else that has anything going on as far as teacher recruitment. Brad Bergson from Goodland. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, to Ryan's point, our district has started several different grow your own initiatives. In fact, our ESL director is in the process of getting her teacher licensure now, and our district is helping to pay for the tuition costs to get her through. She was a long time ESL para within our district, and we're now in the process of getting her all the licensure she needs to hold that position, and she's been great. Along those lines, my oldest son will be graduating Fort Hays State, knock on wood, this May. And last I knew, he had actually accepted a position in Junction City. We hope to get him back soon, but his wife is on the alternate list to get into K-State's vet school. So both needs we have in our region. So hopefully when they're both finished with school, we can get them back out west. We've had varying degrees of success with our transition to teaching programs. Often we see some of our folks that come out of different industries and jump in the classroom. we're about 50% hit or miss on those. But our community has also started kind of earmarking community dollars to help with tuition for students that want to go into education. So we've got a couple different local scholarships to assist with that. I should back up and say that, again, I am the beneficiary, if not directly. My son was on the Board of Regents scholarship for his education. So thank you guys for helping fund that. That has been a great relief to our family. So that's kind of what we're doing in Goodland to varying degrees of success with different initiatives.
Thank you for that. Mr. Cole, you had your hand up. Go ahead, sir.
Yes, thank you for the opportunity. I find it, as I listen to our previous board members, ironic that you hear the word grow your own, because I think that's what everybody is kind of doing the same. One thing that we've done in Lebec County is we use our high school students who have an interest in education, and then we'll allow them some time to spend in our local K-8 buildings or high school buildings, and they are doing a mentoring program along with it. I'll say that my daughter, she's in her second year at community college at Lebec County and community college, and then she's transferring to Pittsburgh State and will get her educational degree as well. And she comes from a long line of educators. Her grandparents had taught, her grandfather taught 35 years middle school science, and her grandmother was elementary teacher at one of the local schools in town. I think the challenges from a recruitment standpoint, it is a challenge, and for particularly some of the rural communities, as some of our other board members spoke about, sometimes we get candidates that are ready and willing to come to our district, but then there's another opportunities in other districts which could actually pay a higher rate than what we can pay based off of our pay scale, and that does create some challenges. Another thing to be aware of, we used to go to recruitment days at Pittsburgh State or some of the other universities, and what we find in education is, 10, 15 years ago, there would be 20, 30 candidates that would be signing up or looking for jobs. And the amount of folks that are going into education, we would be lucky to have maybe 2 or 3 that will come through the line that are looking for a particular position. So I think there's obviously some barriers or obstacles or perception in education that, is worth figuring out. But so I appreciate the opportunity. It does sound like everybody kind of faces the same barriers, but I think all of us are working diligently to try to resolve those issues.
Thank you, sir. All right, I'm going to turn to, do we have someone else with their hand up on WebEx? Okay, it's him. Okay, I'm going to turn to Representative Essex and then Representative Sanders.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question is for board members Connell and Stabler. As you both mentioned in your opening statement that you started in January of 2022. It's always difficult to get to know a new job. So I was wondering, how's that going? How many hours a week are you guys spending in your new job, and what's your biggest hurdle been?
It's been a very interesting year. I spend approximately 30 to 35 hours a week visiting schools. I am very visible in my community. I have 19 schools in my district, so I make sure that I am in communication with teachers, parents, principals. I attend awards. I go to lunch with children. I try to make visits to all the different types of schools. I've also made it, because my district is so large, it's hard to pinpoint an area that I have to find my space of where I fit in, where I am concentrating, where my concentration is. And that would be in behavior and mental health issues. Also, special education. And we have over 100 languages spoken in our schools. Most of our schools have we have a real robust classrooms full of newcomers. We call them our newcomers, where they spend kindergarten to third grade they go directly to classrooms, and then the older children have classrooms that they stay in until they're ready to be mainstreamed. I think as a board member, it took me about a year to get acclimated to my job, to create trust in my community, which I'm still working on, and try to make myself visible in creating that communication and open line and trust within the community. I think that's very important. Also to learn, I'm still learning my job. We're in the process of hiring a new superintendent, which has been a very time-consuming project. And it's our only job as a board member, that our only job is to hire the superintendent. And so that hopefully that will be over soon. And we've spent a great many hours interviews and doing our due diligence, as we have such a large district, and it's very important that we hire the best person that's qualified to lead our district. Did I answer your question?
Thank you.
So it's a great question, and I'm going to start off with saying I think Hazel and I are a lot more alike than most school board members historically have been. So she talks about spending 35 hours a week. That is a personal choice for me as well. I'm in the schools as much as I can. I've invited people, so I've been reading in the schools and visiting schools and judging forensics events and whatever I can be, because I always say I'm not political, I'm social. So that works real well when it comes to the children and the teachers and the staff and representing them and the parents in the same district. The learning curve was steep, so yes. So I was sworn in January of 22, and I would encourage that maybe, and I've shared that with KASB, is like a more standardized and structured onboarding model. Most of that first year, I was learning everything sort of on my own. And that makes it hard when you're trying to do the best you can. And so the model historically, when board members are unpaid and elected, there wasn't space in most people's time to do 30 hours a week. There just isn't. And that's a challenge of its own. And so the model is we're here to guide the superintendents in their roles. But how do you mentor? How do you guide if you don't have that breadth and depth and width of what's going on in the schools? Now, we're in these huge school districts, so granted, it might be different, but I think the model is still the same. Is the more that we know, the more that we can understand, from curriculum to policy to, but I have found that Superintendent Yeager and our attorney for the district have been very, very gracious with me. I mean, I've read about 80% of our board policies, and that is not normal. And I found duplicate policies, yes. And so that's my job, is to kind of be there, but also to represent. So the challenges have been in a learning curve. But that doesn't mean we aren't functional and capable and we are caring about what's going on. I think that's kind of where I am still. I feel like the fire hose is still full blast, but I invited that, right? I ran to be elected for that, to not sit back, to be engaged, right? All of our schools are struggling, right? I mean, you all have heard our superintendent articulate that we're moving $30 million out of general funds this year to cover our special ed needs. Our staff and our special ed have not increased in paras or irregular teachers, but our increase in students was over 1,000 students moving to that needs. Teachers that used to 4 years ago cover 2 schools are covering 3 schools. We're in a desperate situation coming out of COVID in which kids didn't see schools, didn't see teachers, really regressed. both emotionally, mentally, educationally. And so we're struggling. And that's where I see my job, is to be there to hear and to listen and to articulate from my role as from the community, and bridge backwards. The teachers are struggling, the administrators are struggling, we're all struggling, but to work with them and as best I can. And that's my model. I would never want to push my model of engagement on other board members who may be less engaged, who don't have that time. I happen to run a small business, and I have amazing people that do the work, and that has given me flexibility. So please don't take my level of engagement to be a requirement or expectation of anybody else. But you asked about our experiences, there it is.
Representative Sanders.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We heard it today. We hear it all the time that one of the metrics for determining at-risk students are free and reduced lunches. So is that a good metric? Why are kids who are qualify for free and reduced lunch more likely to be at risk? And I'll ask that of anybody who'd care to respond.
This is Brian, and my mic's open, so I'll answer that. I couldn't honestly tell you that that's a complex enough answer for how we fund, to be very honest. That is a factor, and in our school district, there's a lot of kids moving in, and it's a factor in defining funding and how do we support our groups. But we do have we have 5 Title I schools, and Title I being described as those in need of free and reduced lunch. And so as a very large school district with a very large population of need, that's a baseline. But we're also responsible for making sure that those families who are in need are communicating with us and that we're asking, right? We have to own that, because I think we're probably underestimating, I'm pretty sure we're underestimating the need in our own community, let alone everybody else's communities, of those who would truly honestly fit that. But I do think it's a piece of the information. That's just my thought.
I'd like to hear from Brad Bergsman and Sandra Halling on this one, if you all would be happy to weigh in, please.
In our community, I'll start by saying that the federal government designates free and reduced as kind of their metric for poverty. Locally, what I would tell you is, at least in our community, we have a really oddly a transient population. One of the during one of our last strategic meetings, planning meetings, our board went back and looked at our numbers over the past 6 years of graduating classes. Out of those classes, only about 30% matriculate through our system. So 70% of the students that we receive kind of come and go on any given year. And again, it is typically a migrant agricultural population or single family homes that kind of come in and out of the education system. So as the previous speaker pointed out, it's one metric of many that we use to determine kind of at-risk and needs in our community, but it's kind of a baseline that we utilize to really as our first indicator of what we need to be looking for. I hope that answers the question. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Halling, do you have anything to add to that?
Yes, I could add a little bit to that too. When I think of our at-risk students, and I know that in K-12 world, that is primarily determined by whether or not they qualify for free or reduced lunches. If you look at the criteria for at-risk students for preschool, some of the criteria is a little bit different, because one of those things is if you're a parent, if you become a parent as a teenager. And so I think we have families then that have done fairly well, but their parents were very young when they started parenting, and it did maybe create some issues for them because childcare was hard to find, or jobs that could be secured in a small community like Buckland. A lot of people commute, and so in Ford County as a whole, wages are not the highest. That it makes things difficult in a smaller town, because if they're having to commute, then they're going to have transportation. They're going to have reliable childcare. Um, and I think those are factors that we need to think of as putting some of our students at risk as well, where they might not necessarily qualify for free or reduced lunches doesn't mean that there are not struggles in those other households as well. Does that make sense? But anyway.
One of the things that I'm driving at is that just seems to be the main factor. And I don't mean to diminish it, but what I think is there have to be other factors that are probably at least equal to that.
Yes, there probably are. I think that what would maybe be a good thing to do is, as we in a small community also, and I'm going to say this because I've had parents tell me this, there are parents that might qualify for free or reduced lunch, but they don't fill out the paperwork because they don't want their child to be singled out as someone that's getting a free or reduced lunch, because they want to try to make sure that it's like they kind of try to hide their poverty or their income level. They don't want their kids to look any different or be treated any differently than others. And so we would probably actually have more kids on our free or reduced lunch lists if that weren't the case. And so I think there's some stigma involved there as well.
Very good. Mr. Cole, was there anything you had to add? And then I will turn to Ms. Stabler.
I think I agree with everybody that there are so many different metrics. One thing that we challenge with is single parent moms, and then the fact that a lot of them aren't working, and so that if they're working and they're on assistance, then their income levels down, and then there's other factors at risk of students that are at risk because of parents with drug abuse. There's all kinds of things that tag on to that, and to the answer to the question, it's not easy to identify exactly what the right answer is, but definitely there is some challenges there as well. I will say one thing. The gentleman spoke earlier at the table. Forgive me for his name, and he was talking about the amount of money that the excess cost was coming out of his general ed budget. And we in Lebec County are similar. We're not a huge district. Again, we have 1,550 students, but out of our general budget alone, our excess cost will be well over $1 million. And so those are some of the challenges of financially that impact our students and our parents, and just basically financially of servicing those children. And we believe we're just like everybody else. We're gonna give those children the best opportunity that we possibly can. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Ms. Stabler.
So as an urban school district, we suffer from a large transient population, homelessness, single parent, drug use, foster care. There's a lot of children in foster care. And I believe that our district does a very good job of trying to monitor and track these families. And we have credit recovery for students who miss a lot of school. We have a lot of chronic tardiness and absenteeism, and they're finding unique ways to try to eliminate those. We have summer school that we rolled out last year to help the students who are in need. And I feel like we have a lot of community support as well that steps in and helps with our families that are in need.
Representative Ruiz.
Chairman, and this question is for Ms. Holling. You stated in your introduction that you upped your salary 16% from 2016, which equates now to a little over 2% a year. How's that affected your recruitment and retention? Can you elaborate on that, please?
I believe that that has helped. You know, we set a goal a couple of years ago to try to get our base pay for teachers up over $40,000, just because that just sounds so much better than 38.5 or 39.2 or something. And but still attracting teachers to our community with what we are paying now is still difficult, primarily because you know, we have a lack of housing, we don't have a grocery store, childcare availability is extremely low. And so if you have teachers wanting to come to your community, but they can't find a place to live, or there's no place for them to take their child to a babysitter, it's hard to attract. And so it's, you know, our community needs go hand in hand sometimes with our needs at our school as well. But it has helped. And when Ryan was talking about the programs that Dodge has had, you know, to have paras become teachers, we've been doing that as well. And we've had several teachers that have been in our transition to teach programs, coming out of other walks of life and getting into education. And that has been very beneficial to us. And we've helped with their education costs. We've helped with para education costs. And we've even offered like for new teachers, instead of just getting, we've offered them a 13-month for their first year to have 13 paychecks. So prior to the start of school, they'll get a paycheck so that they have money to move on, because, you know, you're going to have to pay down payments on your rent or utilities and things like that. And it just helps because, you know, it's expensive for them to move. And so those are things that we've tried to do to help, and having to, and like I said, having our base pay up a little bit over 40,000 now has helped us a little bit as well.
Go ahead.
Thank you for that. And then my next question is for Ms. Stabler, Wichita. My school district is USD 500. And one of the questions I asked my superintendent is how many percentage of single parent households were in our district. And they gave me the answer of close to 70%. You find that about what your school district is?
It's quite high. I don't know specifically the number of single parent, but I know that it is quite high. With the newcomers, sometimes kids large families come together, and the kids really don't have their parents with them. You know, they come with other people. So I couldn't give you an exact number. I don't know what the number is on single mothers or parents.
Thank you.
Representative Younger.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was wondering from the other board members that Buckland's about 40,000 for starting salary. Do the rest of you know what those starting salary wages would be?
43.
So this is Brian Connell in Olathe. We're in the middle of renegotiating our contracts. We start generally about 42. We're in the process of recommending to our bargaining committees that we would move that to 46. However, I'm going to go on the record because I want to call it out. They're woefully inadequate across the state. My family lives in Frisco, Texas. They started 800 brand new teachers this past school year at a base pay for a brand new out of college teacher of 56. If you think we're going to have problems recruiting now, think about teachers saying, I can go to Texas or in Arkansas where they're starting them at 50. It's not always about the pay, but then that's where you start every conversation. So I am fighting the 46 and saying, why aren't we at 50? But that is the model that we've been stuck with. My mother-in-law taught in Manhattan for 30 years, never made 50 with a master's degree. There is a challenge in equity that we're a prosperous school district, I'll use that word carefully, right, in a county with more money. Yeah, Goodland, Buckland, Labette, are going to struggle to pay these folks if we're just drawing them east and there's not something else there. Because pay isn't the only thing. Because if you ask most teachers, they do it because of their love of the kids and what they do and why they do it. No, none of them are saying, I'm doing it for the money. That's just not how this works. They do it because they love it and have a passion. And somehow we have to look at those teachers and those instructors and say, we need to reward that passion, just like corporate businesses do everywhere. So that's just my 2 cents. Sorry if I went astray.
Before we move on, can anybody tell me the state income tax in Texas? 0. All right. WebEx, y'all go ahead.
I just wanted to comment on that. Our starting salaries right at $40,500, and it's really the same for the interlocal for our special education teachers. One thing that I don't think we've talked much about, not only is that, but is also our paraprofessionals, our frontline workers coming in straight off the street. Basically, all we can do at this level, and we've got it up. We've worked hard over the last 3 to 4 years to get it up, and our starting wage for paraprofessionals is $11 an hour. And when you think about $11 an hour, to the gentleman's point earlier, is you really want to be working for education and be committed to kids, because you can go to Walmart, because I think they just raised their corporate starting rate or at store level for frontline employees to $18 an hour. And for our communities, we're all fighting for similar and same employees. We're about $6-7 uncompetitive on the pay scale. And I realize, to the gentleman's point, we feel, we advertise ourselves or promote ourselves as a family. We work together, we value each other, but it gets to a certain point to where are your family's best interests are? Are they in teaching public education, or is it to go in a private sector where typically somebody can come fresh out of college and take a general sales job for a company for $55,000 a year. So I think those are challenges, and I know from a committee standpoint, you folks represent our taxpayers, and I commend you for the work that you're doing, because it's a challenge in itself. But money doesn't fix everything, but it does impact a lot. So thank you guys.
Mr. Bergsma?
Yeah, I'll just jump in real quick. We've had the unfortunate, I guess, of chasing Representative Younger's home district a little bit. Ulysses has kind of set the bar for us in Western Kansas. I believe they're right around $50,000 in base. We've managed to move ours base salary up to 45, and we're offering about an additional $1,200 match as part of the benefit package for a retirement account. So our benefit package is roughly around 46. Typically, we'll try and bump that base $500 to $1,000 if we can stretch enough, which has been difficult the last couple of years, but really our goal is to get to that $50,000 mark, which is where the western side is kind of chasing after some of our friends in Southwest Kansas.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just as a follow-up, since Mr. Cole mentioned the para salaries, is anybody else significantly over $11 an hour, or is that, $11, $12, $13 an hour pretty standard?
We just moved ours 2 years ago from $8 an hour to $12 an hour for our paras. That includes a insurance plan, single insurance plan. But Mr. Cole's point, you could walk into Walmart right now and be making $16 to $18 an hour. So locally, we are not extremely competitive.
And in the Olathe schools, as Brian again, we did raise the base para to $15 an hour from what was then 11 or 12. It was, and mostly during one election, I was railing against the lack of pay. Throughout that whole period, it was like, we need to pay these people. Now that's a starting pay. We do their para 1, para 2. So the one with the more need, the kids that had greater needs, there is a slightly higher pay than that. But I mean, Dairy Queen pays 15, Walmart starts at 17 in Olathe. You know, we're really looking at those people who have a care. And that goes back to that why every one of us has to grow your own. If we find someone who has an interest in kids and learning and education, that's one thing that just struck me when I took notes, is every one of us has figured out we have to pour back into those families and find a way to support them. So.
Very good. I know there's more questions. I'm going to take one if that's okay. One of the things we've seen across the nation, I actually watched a TV special about it the other night, was bullying in schools. And I know we've taken up a couple of bills. We've kind of held back a little bit because we know the state board is acting as well on this and has taken action. Could y'all talk and anyone could take this, at a local level, kind of what you're seeing, what you're hearing, what action steps have been implemented in your district? Or just any way you're making an impact there, kind of whoever wants to go.
I'm happy to take, this is Brian, I'm happy to take that first. It's sort of a loaded question, so I'm going to ask a question back. Could you better define your interpretation of the word bullying?
Yes, I can. So for example, we've got kids with cell phones. We've got kids in restrooms that are starting fights with other kids, maybe special needs kids, kids with disabilities. We see cameras taking shots of it on social media. We've got kids who, even my own child has gone through things that I won't get into, but that's overall what I'm looking for, is like kids picking on other kids, cyberbullying, recording it with their cell phones, sending it out to social media, things like that. I know, like I said, with Snapchat and the increase of kids with cell phones, we're seeing a lot of that cyberbullying stuff. So,
thank you, because that's what I'm gonna. That works for me, because I would categorize 98% of that as just baseline lack of respect and incivility. When I was growing up, and I was in 11 schools in 14 years, my dad flew Navy jets, my mom was a school librarian. We lived all over this country, and regardless of money, regardless of everything, where everybody was, some of the poor school districts and richest school districts in this country, what we saw was that the school districts that seemed to do better had an organized structural model, and I'm not going to use, it's going to sound like SEL, but what they did is they had a process for representing, understanding, and identifying and encouraging the recognition that we are all unique and individual, right? Now, the tag word to that says diversity these days, but diversity is a fact. We are all different. What we have to do is identify how to articulate that and then recognize that and then show respect, provide dignity, and honor each of us individually, right? That's not that hard, but we struggle as a society on the outside. And then we overcomplicate it at the school side. And not to address the phone thing, I have no problem raising my hand and saying that one of my daughter's classes does this. They put socks up by the wall, the kids walk in the class and they put their phones in that sock, and well, they get 3 minutes to look at their phones. They put the phones in the socks for 45 minutes. They go to class. The teacher gives them 5 minutes before they go to the hallways to pick up their phones and look at their phones, and they're 100% focused. That's very not consistent across the school. But I believe that's fair. I'm not taking a phone, I'm putting it over there. Just like I did. My phone is in my briefcase down here, right? Proper respect of the teacher and those who should hold their attention. It's not that hard. But we, as adults, seem to want to overcomplicate that. Now, from the bullying perspective, there are times when we move from incivility and to true full bullying, right? My approach to bullying is it's something that's repeated and consistent and pervasive. That's mine. I don't know if it's everybody else's, right? But their kids are going to learn from that. The less they're using their phones, right? That's where parents are supposed to come in and say, hey, right, what are you doing? Where are you going, right? But that is causing problems that people are using the social media. We don't need to pile on and make it significantly worse within the school day. So, but the teachers are getting the perception of consistent bullying from some in the community, and some teachers should maybe look for a new job because they're struggling with how to treat and manage the kids, and with massive increases in our IEPs and our kids that are emotionally struggling, physically struggling. That's a professional development thing we could do better at, right? Let's talk about how do we handle that, right? In any given school, in our schools, a handful maybe are trauma informed. Where's that funding? Where's the funding for the basic professional development to say that every teacher should recognize and be aware of what is an IEP, what is a challenge, what are the needs, how are we handling that, so that they're working as a team, right? But you know, again, I go back to the first time, it's a frank lack of incivility, and everything that's going on these days in schools could be an incubator to kind of get into simplicity, right? There's a term I've learned, diversity without division. We can be different, we can look different, we can talk different, we can politically have different values, religious entities. There's just basic common respect and understanding and curiosity. Why aren't I curious? That's why I said earlier, I'm not political, I'm social, right? I probably talked too much, so I'm gonna turn it off.
I would like to jump in real quick, Mr. Chair, if you don't mind. I think that is honestly $1 million question, because frankly, what has happened over the last, we'll call it 10 years, since everyone has an iPhone in their back pocket, all of our districts are certainly trying to find ways to reduce the amount of bullying. But when you consider that phone is in their pocket 24 hours a day, we're being asked to control things that are happening outside the school day, which is been a big adjustment, I think, for many of our districts. Ongoing, you know, obviously it's something we look to address. Sometimes it hopefully can be as simple as putting that phone in a sock by the door, but that's not going to account for what's happening after 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock, and friend groups or whatever on social media is going to allow that to live longer than just what's happening in the school day. So in our district, digital citizenship is part of curriculum that we start as early as the elementary schools, because I do believe it's critical. There's no reason we should have kids going into bathrooms with phones and starting fights, but also just making them aware of what happens when they hit the send button or tweet or snap or whatever flavor of social media they choose to be on. But it's a pretty large hill to climb when you consider the school is being relied on to control and impact what's going on the other 16 hours a day that they're not in our buildings. Thank you.
I think it's a fair point. Ms. Stabler?
So as I mentioned before, one of the things that I decided to do when I took this position is to to make myself more aware of my community. So I actually visited a juvenile courtroom to see the students, our students that were coming through the court, the reasons why they were having problems, the home life and et cetera. And what I realized after talking to the judge and to various other community people, that a lot of our problems they start at home. There's no support at home. There's loss of respect. There's no conscience. They don't have a conscience for their actions, and there aren't enough repercussions for their actions also in school, because they are protected a lot by law, especially our IEP students. I spoke to a hearing officer recently. I went to a hearing, and he told me that we are at the number that we were at the end of last school year, and that he expects that our hearings to go over 1,000 this year, behavior problems. And so that is a big concern. And one thing that bothers me is the COVID reason. There's, you know, they lay back and they blame the problems that the students are having on COVID. Well, we're past COVID, and we need to move forward and quit blaming COVID for the problems we have as students, as for, you know, we need to move on. So that irritates me.
Anybody else want to chime in on WebEx?
Or other board members have said, we do use a digital process to where we communicate with our students, and we'll have a high school session to where we'll talk about the needs and what happens when you hit the button and where it goes. And it does help, but it doesn't stop it, and it is a challenge. I'm going to just make a comment about bullying in general, and it's unfortunate, but it feels like to me, and I think others will confer, but there's a lot of bullying going on in society. I mean, there's a lot of bullying from an adult standpoint and respect standpoint, and people just having general respect for others for what they are, regardless of whether we're, you know, as the gentleman said, diverse, and we all are diverse. But I think once we get to a level to where we, as a society, start respecting each other for what they are, I think we'll become a better place. And then from a board perspective, a board member perspective, there is, and it feels like, and I know I'm not alone in stating this, there's a national narrative out there that the boards across the United States are basically failing, and we're all with an agenda that not necessarily is representative of who we are. Yeah, we're, you know, I'm from Southeast Kansas, and we're 90% Caucasian, but I'll tell you this, there's not a student that doesn't walk into USD 506 doors that we don't love them as they are our own. They're from different demographics, different economic, socioeconomic backgrounds. And when we leave, they leave Lebec County. And I'll say this, probably other district, the majority of the districts across the state of Kansas, they truly are empowered to be in a better place and to be a better citizen. And again, there are exceptions to that. So from a board member perspective, the pay is horrible. I mean, the pay is horrible at zero. But the reward is completely priceless when you see a student that has walked across the stage that probably didn't have an opportunity, or had our public education system took that young man or young woman underneath their wings and delivered them to a place to where they can be a productive member of society. And I think that passion is the passion that all school board members have. And we don't want pay. There's none of us that would say we want pay, because if we're going to have pay come into a board member, I think 95 or 100% of them would probably say, hey, let's just put it back in the classroom where it impacts students.
Very good. And I think it's great to hear that kind of what we all agree is that society needs a lesson in respect, and I think it does start at home, and I think it's awesome to hear that. So thank you all for that. Any other questions from the committee? Representative Haskins.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'll just open this up here. We just passed gun safety in the House, and we will be mandating that your school district, after the state oversees the standards, that you have to now teach gun safety in your programs. How are we feeling about that?
Representative Haskins, pardon me, I'm calling you all senators today. I will say this, in Back County, we already promote gun safety. And I think that that's something that we'll welcome. We have started, and many of the schools have trap shooting teams where we have individuals that are participating in trap shooting, and they learn gun safety and they learn those things. Now, that's not a function of the school. It's community members that have been involved, and we'll help promote them, but we have nothing to do with it. But I think gun safety is absolutely critical for all schools, and in my opinion, most will welcome it.
Representative Chamoy had a quick comment.
Just to clarify for everybody, it is not mandatory that your school districts adopt teaching gun safety. The bill that was passed today, 2304, actually just sets the standard of what it will look like as far as the content of stop, don't touch, run away, tell a grown-up. That's all that does.
So this is Brian. I'll chime in on the gun safety. So in our school district, we teach swim safety. We teach health, which most of that is about protection and safety for one's body, right? We teach, so adding it in as part of a program or an elective, I don't have any problem. When we teach them how to play football, we teach them how to do it safely, right? What I don't know the whole bill that y'all passed, but I will say the greatest threat to safety is ignorance. Ignorance is not a terrible term. It just means I don't know. And if we don't teach a little bit or the basics and whatever the bill may say, is like recognize we teach tornado safety yesterday all across the state, fire safety, right? My son had a cardiac arrest. We just passed the first board policy in the state that requires sudden cardiac awareness safety. So from that perspective of information, without bias would be my approach, right? So that would be,
And I do appreciate the clarification from my colleague. And so I also appreciate the comment about, ignorance is something we need to be conscientious about because it is dangerous. And I would recommend that you take some time and go maybe look at some of the more juvenile retention centers to see that it is far more complex than just treating people well and that we just as a society, because you'll find students who haven't eaten all day until they've gotten to the school, or you'll find a parent who shows up and picks up their kid drunk or smelling of marijuana, and obviously the kid will come in the morning and fall asleep because the father has been playing his guitar all night. So I really wish that we had a society in which we could just say, you know what, let's just treat people better. But going back on mandating and let's say that, I don't know, hypothetically, the state mandates that you have to give your teachers every year without any additional funds a salary increase. And that is mandated in law, or you don't get special education funding. How do we feel about that?
so it's a really good hypothetical. So I'm going to take it from this perspective.
I'm going
to take this from this perspective with all due respect.
Well, if I may, I thank you for that. You've had the floor. I would rather hear from Ms. Stabler.
Sure.
Let's not cut off the conferees, please.
So the question was mandatory. So I will.
Mandatory pay increases.
So the model that the state of Kansas has that is unique, it gives an awful lot of responsibility to the local school boards, right? And so I would defer that, and I tend to be, and I'm going to use this word loosely, libertarian in the model of laws. We have to be very careful that we don't push something that tells me that I have to jump rope at the same time you've tied one of my arms behind me. So I think less legislation ultimately is better. That I think guidelines right here, the sides of the highway, we'd like you all to be figuring out how to manage your way down the highway. Very specific types of laws and rules around who has to pay what and how they pay them and who gets paid how much. That's already something we do with our bargaining unit in public. So I would say from the Olathe perspective, we'd probably say, let us take care of ourselves. And if others aren't taking care of themselves, then put the pressure appropriately where it ought to be. But I believe that in this state, the model is that the school district should have that responsibility, hold that responsibility, and you elect us as a board to be responsible. It's an opinion, not representing my board because I have not reviewed it with the board, but I'm going to say I'd rather less laws like that.
And I appreciate it, and I do apologize for interrupting. I was just trying to give someone else, and I apologize.
I agree with what you're saying. However, my opinion is that we don't pay our teachers enough. They are teaching our future and the kids that are going to be taking care of me and my aged. And if our kids aren't prepared to integrate in society with a good base education, then we're kind of not looking at a very good future. At any rate, I don't think that there's always, the teachers, of course, we're going through negotiations right now, and the teachers every year ask for a pay increase, and I personally would support 100% giving them as much as we can. I think that I'd rather get rid of programs that are redundant and put that money into teacher salaries. And I think that, and we were talking about policy books. Our policy book is 500 pages. So there's, we need to look at really taking care of our teachers, our paras, it's security guards, everyone who takes care on the front lines with our kids and our students, because their safety is also important and they need to feel safe in school. And we need to retain good teachers, and the only way that we can do that, I think, is to pay them a fair, good salary.
Anybody on WebEx want to chime in?
Well, I would just, since we're speaking hypothetically, I guess, I would revert back to saying that that's to some degree the whole notion of local control of our school boards. If we in Goodland or Kevin in Labette wanted to have a class size of 12 and figure out a way that we can fund it within our communities, then that's our goal. If our goal is we want to be the highest base salary in the state of Kansas, and that's something we decide to move towards locally, then again, I think that is the local aspect of all of our school boards. Certainly, you're not going to find any school board member across the state of Kansas that says we're paying our teachers too much. You only need to step into a classroom for a day and experience what our teaching staff live through on a daily basis to understand that, we have some truly special and gifted people in all of our buildings across the state. And as school board members, it's really our goal to support them however we can.
Very good. Representative Younger had a question, I believe.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Hey, you're talking about negotiations, and so that means kind of we're in that teacher recruitment phase also. So you guys have any idea how many openings you're looking at, and what's that toughest job to fill for you? What are the admin staff staying awake at night thinking, how are we going to fill this position? Thank you.
Start with WebEx on that one. Make sure they get a chance to chime in on there, please. Anybody?
Senator Younger, or Representative Younger, sorry, I apologize about that. One of the another one of the challenges facing education is retirement. We've got an aging population of teachers in retirement. So I think Labette County has 3 teachers that are retiring, and we have some that are transferring to other locations. So at a given juncture, we're probably at a situation where about a dozen teachers needed. We feel confident there's folks that are coming out of college that we can get, and a lot of times what we end up having to do is bring a teacher back that has been retired to maybe fill in a year to do that. So I think overall it is a challenge. And to Brad's point earlier, we just find a way to do so. Yeah, there's definitely an opportunity there.
I think we're looking at in the neighborhood of counting the 4 positions we left open from this year. I know we have at least 7 or 8 people leaving our district for various reasons, retirement, moving, headed back east to take in the more suburban areas, I guess. So we're looking at probably in the neighborhood of 12 positions. If we're full staffed, that puts us around 65 to 70 on any given year. So not quite a quarter of our staff will be looking to turn over this year.
Are you going to be able to find that girls basketball coach this year, Brad?
He's on kind of a short leash right now, treading thin ice. For those of you that don't know, our girls basketball coach is also our superintendent of schools. So we're super glad to have him. And full disclosure, bus drivers are a challenge for us to find. But Bill Bierman has, I wouldn't be shocked if he's driving the bus to Hutchinson this weekend. So he drives bus on a relatively regular basis. And I would challenge my peers to find if there are very many other superintendents across the state that pull fairly regular bus duty.
Ms. Holling?
So we have one teacher position open, and at this point, we have not received any notification of anybody retiring or leaving our school. And I'm hoping that stays that way. And but we also have openings for we're like a facilities coordinator, transportation coordinator. That's been our head custodian's job, and he is retiring at the end of this school year. And we have not had a single applicant for that. And part of that, I'm sure, has, our facility, our custodian, our head custodian has so many duties in a small school. He drives the bus every day. He is there late on days when there's activities in the building or ball games after school and things like that. So that's been a difficult piece for us too. And again, getting someone in our community to take on that job. We thought we had someone, but then somebody offered him a job that paid more money and he went with them. So those are some struggles that I'm sure that many of us face. But as far as the number of teachers that we need, if we had a little bit bigger budget, I believe we would probably try to bring in some teachers to high school that could maybe teach more higher level math or science classes. And then maybe we could start a couple of different CTE pathways, like one for, maybe nursing or something to do with maybe engineering or something like that. We're limited on what we can offer in that respect. And so getting a little, being able to put into our budget a way to do that would be wonderful.
Mr. Cole, I think you had your hand up. Go ahead, sir.
Yes, a couple of, just another statement, and it's non-relative to hiring teachers that may be void, is a concern that I have and others have, basically is we've talked a lot about funding and teacher pay raises and those types of things, but if I understand it correctly, the pay raises, possibly there's some funding coming for special education and pay raises for teachers and general fund. But those are tied into an ESA bill. And that's concerning as we were going into negotiations and having these conversations that we're lobbing, that sector in there into those bills and try to tie them all in together. And I'm not being critical because I understand the way things have to work, but it generally is a concern.
Okay. Ms. Stabler, sorry.
I would love to say that we only have one opening in our school district. One of the first questions that I asked when I came on board was, what is the teacher loss every year? And we average about 200 teachers a year that we lose, so that we have to recruit. So we have several recruitment days that they just had one recently about a week ago. And it's not just teachers, though. We need bus drive. We contract with Student First bus company, and so we're short on bus drivers and maintenance and paras. So there is a real shortage in our employees. So that's why I think we have a really good recruitment team that really works hard and tries to find innovative ways to find people that will and find ways to attract them to Wichita. Wichita has a lot to offer. There's a lot of misconceptions about our district because we are so large. So much is expected from us, but there are a lot of challenges and there are a lot of people to work with. And I think all in all, overall, we all have the same goal and the same end, and that is our students.
So I'll add real quickly, because I know they were running out of time here. So we have where we struggle within the Olathe School District, we always get really high qualified teaching staff. I mean, the line's not as long as it used to be, but filling those positions is not nearly as hard as filling our specialists. Special ed teachers, our audiologists, our psychologists, our behaviorists, those specialist positions are rare. Frankly, I'd love to see the governor authorize a separate budget for recruiting those folks and their families from other parts of the country, because you can't just bring in a teacher to any part of Kansas without recognizing you're affecting an entire family, right? Now, Chamber of Commerce pitch, you guys pay attention. Second thing is we have an aging population of teachers. If you look at our average compensation, it seems high, but that's just because we have relatively few new teachers in our systems. And we'll be probably hitting a precipice in the next 3 to 6 years with a significant portion of our teachers. So today's recruiting is tomorrow's saving. Our bus drivers, we're in the middle of having to renegotiate our whole bell schedule and what time we do things because we can't get bus drivers. That's a service, right? That's a contract service that we need to have, just as if it was sanitation or anything else. But if they can't get them, we can't get them. And we're not being able to get all of our kids to all of the programs that we have in place. The last thing is, I believe one of the things that Olathe, I'm going to pitch for something around fixing the finance program around virtual schools. The state funds only the bare minimum for children in virtual schools. But I believe, to Ms. Holland's question, is like, if you had a spectacular math teacher who could have students from other places for an hour a day join that class, we're not funding that appropriately. And our virtual school funded for a year and defunded because it was running a $3 million deficit. I watched those kids. We had a bunch of kids that was a saving grace in their ability to go to school and handle school psychologically and educationally. But we're only paying $5,000 to the school districts for each of those kids. It's not recognizing the other services and other needs that we have. We had 20% of those kids were special needs kids. That is a passion of mine I'd like to see, because this is a day and age where my son is in college and he's taking 25–30% of his classes are virtual, and most of them are in place. Why? Because the best teachers, the best educators might not be in Goodland or in Buckland or in Labette or in Olathe, but if we can matrix that great instructor, then we're doing something really special in Kansas. And that, whether it's this year or next year, you'll probably hear me for years, that my superintendent's tired of me saying it, that's an advocacy we have to have in Kansas if we're really going to take care of every district. So that's my 2 cents.
Yeah, I agree about the virtual schools. It's a passion of mine too. The funding was flat for about 6, 7 years. And I think just last year we gave them another 600 per. So I think that needs to be addressed as well. I'll second that point with you. Okay, it is 3 o'clock, so I want to give everybody a couple of minutes. I know last time, I believe it was Representative Younger asked the question, so I'm going to steal his thunder, but you know, us bald guys stick together. What is a need, and how can we help, and what is it you need from us? I would like each one of you to kind of take that one one at a time, and whoever can go first.
I'll take it because I'm up. I think from us, obviously, we talked a lot about financial needs, and again, money doesn't fix everything. It helps, and it doesn't fill net everything. But I think another thing is just perception from our elected leaders that they value public education, and that it's a place to where, you know, kids go to grow up. You said it earlier that sometimes I think one of you gentlemen or ladies spoke about coming to school, and that might be the best meal that they have every day. And we do that basically because we know it's the right thing to do. So just having a perception that public education is valued and that there's a place for that, and that folks are appreciative, I think that means a lot.
Very good. Thank you, sir. Brad, do you want to go ahead and go next?
Yeah, thank you. Again, thank you for having us today. I would throw out there, Kevin touched on it a little bit earlier. I believe that the ESA program, as it is written this year, will be extremely detrimental to rural schools. In a district of our size, roughly 1,000 students, it would only take 1 or 2 families to pull a teacher out of the classroom. When we lose a handful of kids here and there to homeschool or private schools, that really has a significant impact on what happens in our day-to-day business. The second piece that is alarming to me is that even a district of our size that is in relative terms right smack in the middle of Kansas school districts, we're starting to see that because we are big enough to offer services that for students with disabilities or students that have kind of higher end IEPs, while we have the resources to be able to accommodate those students, some of our districts that surround us may not. Something as simple as having a one-story elementary or wheelchair access or elevators in our high school has made the difference to drawing some of those students into our buildings. But those families are choosing to educate their students that don't have the special needs at home or sending them to other districts. So de facto, we are becoming a hub, I guess, for special needs students because of some of the models that we have in place. And I think that will only exacerbate the problem. I will say that the CTE pathways and the support that the legislature has done for that over the last maybe decade or so has been absolutely tremendous for us. So I would encourage you to continue to find ways to fund the CTE programs. Again, in rural America, that's where we have it. I think maybe all of our communities, but especially in rural America, we need plumbers, we need bus drivers, we need electricians. So the more that you guys can do to help us with that would be greatly appreciated. Thank you again for your time today.
Awesome. Thank you for being here. Ms. Holling, would you like to go next?
Yes, I would like to, again, thank you for having me here today. And also, I agree with everything Brad has said. And the helping with the CTE pathway funding is huge. And yes, in a rural community, I think we have lots of students that are interested in some of those trades that would become things where they could be certified upon graduation, you know, maybe as an apprentice to an electrician, or learning HVAC or plumbing, becoming a bus driver or a truck driver, things that our nation needs people in these positions, and can encourage through school to help students get to those things if those are the things that they're interested in. I think one of our biggest needs that we have is that our building envelope is aging. We're in a school that's over 60 years old, and we have a community that is not really interested in passing a bond. And how can we make sure that we're continuing in a facility that is safe and that will hold up and continue to hold up for years to come. And so those are some things that we talk about frequently in a board meeting. You know, our budget has become very tight. I believe last year we, at the end of the school year, we only had about $10,000 left in our budget, and that's pretty in our general fund, and that's fairly low. Where in years past we've had more, and we're able to maybe purchase things that were needed for the classrooms, or things you know, had the money to do things. Now we are scrutinizing purchasing quite. You know, we're a little bit more in tune to making sure that we're not misspending any of our budget at all. And I think that's all I could add to that.
Thank you so much for being here. Ms. Stabler, if you want to go ahead.
So much of the time, I think it's a real problem that people concentrate on the bad that's going on in our schools, but we have a lot of good things going on in our schools as well. In Wichita, we have 27 CTE pathways. We have, I think the first shock that I had was to go to North High and see an airplane being built in the building that I thought was abandoned, and to see kitchens where the kids are learning culinary arts, and apparel design and fashion merchandise, and firefighters. And so we have some great opportunities for our kids, and I would really encourage you as representatives for your cities to be a regular visitor, to celebrate the good things that are happening in our schools, and celebrate our teachers that are sticking in there with us and you know, helping us get to the end of the line. A couple of things that I think that we could use help with is we have a elevated problem with fentanyl in our schools and drug use, and we need to find ways to have more strict consequences to these actions, and maybe zero tolerance, and so that we and more education in our schools about fentanyl, drug use, and behavior problems. And I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to be here today. I really appreciate sharing the great things that are happening in Wichita. I'm not going to say everything is perfect. It's not all good. We do have our problems, as everyone does, but I think we're doing pretty good, and I feel very privileged to be on the board of education and to be a to be in the community and speaking about the good things that are happening in Wichita. Thank you.
Representative Estes, real quick.
Speaking of celebration, nobody, probably besides me, you and your husband in the room, know a very special Kansas first that you set when you set history in Kansas. Would you share that with the committee, please?
Yes, I was the first Kansan to be invited to New York Fashion Week, and I showed a collection in New York Fashion Week. and also the first Kansan to be invited to show a collection in Paris and Milan. So.
Now I feel really sensitive about it. I didn't dress sharper. I didn't even wear a tie, so I was like, okay. So you ask a really big question that's so big I didn't know if I could actually possibly say it, but I tried to write down something that is that at a state level, I'm going to ask that we be fiscally careful, cautious, and conservative so that we can really focus on the priorities, which should be first and foremost. And we're adults. We've lived our lives, but these are kids. And so my ask is make education a kids first model. Are we asking them? Are we asking the parents what those kids need? Now I'm saying, yeah, safety, right? But before everything else, it all comes down to if we're doing bond elections or we're building buildings or we're hiring teachers, it's about the kids. What do they need? Where do we fit? Are we asking those questions? Right? We need to redirect the questions to not about what does a school board need? I appreciate you asking us. We're here in the room, but we don't need squat, right? What do the administrators need? What are the districts or the systems? I mean, with all due respect, it's nice to have big shiny buildings of glass, steel, and metal, and that's not what schools are. Schools are about those kids, and we need to be very careful where we spend our money. My big thing is ask. Then listen, then learn, take action. Right? That's what I tell all my people. So prioritize and focus. Every bill, these pile-on bills that seem to be omnibus bills that have all the things, the singular focus of a topic or an issue at a time makes it easier for us board members in our districts to get behind them. But when they start bundling together, they get muddy, and then they get confusing. And then we have an electric out there, the folks out there who just don't understand. And your ability to be really clear makes it easier for us to get those folks in our community to say, that's good, and this is why, right? I don't have to sit there and say, well, this part's good, and that's not our favorite, right? But to echo what everybody else said, the funding for the CTE Pathways programs, like I said, I've been in the schools a lot, and I'm sometimes the only board member that is there sometimes, but I met a swim team swimmer who made all-state in swimming who was an auto body. He loved it. It was a passion he found he didn't know. I found a track and field athlete who didn't know he liked cooking. He's in the culinary program because he doesn't see college. He sees, I want to run a restaurant. These programs matter to these kids every day. And yes, classic math. I mean, my dad made us take English or social studies, math, science, and English every year, no matter what. What we did after that was up to us. The theater kids, those programs, music matters, the theater matters, all those things matter. So when you're thinking about what you're budgeting, think kids first. And what are we doing that saves a life, improves a life, gives them a future? I wanted to thank you all for inviting me here. As I always tell people, they shouldn't invite me if they don't expect me to have an opinion. And but thank you all so much for having us here and listening and asking our thoughts. I'm really honored by these people that I met today and from the other boards. We have an impressive set of school board folks all over this state, and I'm glad you all are listening to them. Thank you.
Thank you all so much for coming. I appreciate the discussion. And we thank you all for what you do. I know it's a tough job, probably tougher than we even have to do here. So appreciate those that came on WebEx. It was great to have you. Appreciate the input, and let's not let this be the end of the conversation, please, okay? And with that, folks, we will see you Monday. We will be doing a hearing on Senate Bill 13, the broadcasting bill. So with that, committee, thank you, and we are adjourned.